Eu agradeço muito a presença de todos e o convite para estar aqui hoje. Eu vou apresentar parte do doutoramento que eu tenho desenvolvido na Universidade de Lisboa e que ele trata um pouco de como que as mulheres têm sido impactadas com essas mudanças que têm ocorrido na cidade. E não consegue me entender? Mais ou menos?
Es que español tampoco es mi idioma nativo.
Si quieres hablamos en
Pero no pasa nada.
I represent part of my PhD study that I'm doing in Human Geography, University of Lisbon, and is about how women are affected by tourists and other mobilized population. And the research is developed on the project Smart Desk, founded by Horizon 2020. And today I represent the problem of turistification in Lisbon, and I will show some experiences of the resident women. And the reason why I am so interested in this research is because I feel I belong to it, not just because I am a woman, but also because I am a Brazilian immigrant living in Lisbon. I'm living there for almost 4 years. And my study is about how the foreigners influence in this change, and I am part of this change. So this is why I am very interested in this topic. This presentation I will structure in 4 parts. I will briefly present the objectives and the methodology of my study. Then I will talk about gender inequalities and show some preliminary results, and present final considerations for you. And the main question in my PhD is exactly this. How is the daily life of women affected by the terms and leisure-led transformation in the neighborhood? And this study will focus on 3 main topics: public space, local commerce, and social capital. But today I will focus more on the public space. How does tourism development affect the use of public space? And how do residents adapt their routine in a neighborhood with overcrowded public space? And so on. And to carry out this study, I selected just one part of Lisbon, Freguesia da Misericórdia, the red part. This freguesia is in the center of Lisbon and covers, I don't know if everybody knows Lisboa, but cover Cais do Sodré, Bica, Bairro Alto, very famous, and Príncipe Real, and have just 1.1 square kilometers, so it's a small neighborhood. But in this small neighborhood, we have more than 21% of the short-term accommodations, such as Airbnb. So we have a huge concentration of Airbnb in this area. And in the last 10 years, this neighborhood has lost more than 26% of its population. However, if you walk in the area, you will notice a lot of people, which contradicts the census survey. This happens because this neighborhood has attracted a lot of foreigners like me, who have been going to Lisbon, sometimes just to live, just to visit, but sometimes to live for a short period, digital nomads and retired people, which are not captured by the census survey. So this is difficult to understand who are living in these neighborhoods nowadays. And another important point is that Misericórdia has been experiencing a commercial change. The appearance of new types of shops and commercial establishments are oriented for tourists in these new populations. And in the Smart Desk, we did an ethnography study with 43 interviews, and 9 of them was with women residents with different profiles. And I will talk about these interviews and their experiences. But now I would like to talk about another point that is also relevant, about gender inequalities that are still present in our society. This will also help us to understand why my research focuses on the gender category women. We know that in social life, women are still discriminated, underpaid, and more likely to suffer all kinds of physical and emotional abuse. And for example, we earn 23% less than men, and 35% of us have experienced either physical or sexual violence at some point in our lives. And as if that wasn't enough, even if we have an external job, we are responsible for more than 25% more than paid care and domestic work than men. So the social privilege of men are printed in society and consequently in cities. And we know, because feminist research demonstrates that cities and their infrastructure have been designed and organized to respond to patriarchal needs. And this devaluation of housework and caretaking has a negative repercussion on public policies and the configuration of the cities, where these texts are not always taken into consideration. So public space is not neutral. In other words, cities have been designed and organized to respond to a universal concept of people, male, rich, heterosexual, and all the others are discriminated. Therefore, this gender stereotype related to this unequal division of work influence how each gender experiences these male-oriented cities and produces different effects on mobility, permanence, security, and create exclusive practice. So the street, the neighborhood, and the community are vital for the right to the gendered city. Thus, local facilities and services, here I'm talking about grocery stores, school, public transportation, and public space, are much more frequented and used by females than males. Now, imagine living in a tourist city. These last 2 days, we have been sharing different presentations about the negative effects of urban tourism, and these impacts are multiple. We talk about inflationary effects on house prices, the transformation of historic city centers, gentrification, increasing growth of precarious works. But I try to focus on privatization and saturation of public space. Here, it's something like by creating convenience in the use by residents, especially by elderly and children. An example could be overcrowded of gardens where it's difficult to play. The destruction of the visual identity of the place, and the conflicts among local residents and tourists that decrease the residents' sense of belonging. And all these problems that we talked this day, it's present in Lisbon. And I would like to share with you some experience of women living in our study area. And I'd like to start with the problems of terraces, something that we talked yesterday. I don't know if the name in English is, but terraces is these tables where the restaurants and the bars put on the street. So I asked women how they feel about this, and an elderly woman told me that in front of her friend's building, there is one of these terraces. Her friend lives on a very famous street in Misericordia, the one in the picture, Rua Verde or Green Street, which today is completely taken over by tables and signs. And this elderly woman comments that every time she goes to visit her friend, it is difficult because she has to ask people to stand up to get to the door, but they don't always speak Portuguese. And she has difficulty to explain that she wants to enter the building. And because of that, she visits her less. And it has also impacted her friends' access to public space. So they are more alone, each one in their own house, when they live only 3 blocks away. And when I asked her if she used those stores and those new spaces, she told me no. She said that she didn't feel comfortable in them, that they were not designed for her. She doesn't understand the menus because they are writing only in English, and they don't sell food that she is used to eat. So the residents complain that they have lost parking space since most of the building in the area, Misericordia, have no parking. The terraces make it difficult to walk on the sidewalks and causes noise problem. So for many residents, this causes stress. It is important to say that many of these terraces were authorized by public authorities during the pandemic. However, now that things are back to normal and without the distance restriction, the bars and the restaurants continue to occupy the public space. So the noise and the dirtiness of the street was another constant complaint in the interviews, and they point in Bairro Alto and Cais do Sodré as the most problematic areas. And one woman commented during the interviews that your family needed to use earplugs to sleep. So it's a huge problem. And this problem was already a problem, but it has increased after the pandemic. Because unfortunately, even the bars close, young people keep in the street with their loudspeakers. So the neighborhood association have sent several complaints to the public authorities, but the government has not been able to solve this problem. And as you can see in this report, what can residents do? Move to another house, to another city? And now I would like to talk about the public space for leisure. Misericordia has 5 not very big gardens or squares. And we asked the women if they frequented these spaces. And one of them, who is a mother and lives closer to Príncipe Real Garden, this one, said that although this garden is very beautiful, it is a space where she doesn't feel comfortable and safe to go with her children. So she preferred to go to another neighborhood by car where she feels in a community. The mother said that the flow of outsiders, people who have no connection to this area, causes her insecurity and discomfort. And an elderly woman I spoke to in the same garden last month was sitting alone on the benches in the park, told me that Príncipe Real and Praça das Flores, another garden in the area, they are not a place for go with family, to have a picnic and have fun with friends and family, because they are just isolated benches. All the tables we have in this area are from the kiosks and the restaurant, and if you want to use them, you need to buy something. So this lady said that she used this space frequently, but since the commerce has changed and people have moved away, she has no one to talk to. So public spaces was spaces in neighborhood. They are very important for the relationship in the neighborhood. But in Misericordia, they are not always appropriate for use by residents. They not perform as a space for them to socialize with each other. So we have a lot of foreigners people just stay for 1 day or 1 month. So it's difficult to make friends in these spaces. And we can see the same problems in our public space in Misericordia. Here we have Praça de São Paulo and a space near Cais do Sodré. And we can see the same. All these tables are from the kiosks, so we need to buy something to sit it can sit in this space without consuming something. And the dirtiness and the noise is very bad in these spaces too. So this makes these spaces dangerous for children, dangerous for families to visit and to permanent in them. And to conclude, I would like to mention that in spaces where a large flow of tourists coexist with this everyday life of residents, present more challenging for all genders to realize the right to the city. And we have been talking about this these days. However, it impacts even more those who have a greater dependence on proximity space. And as I mentioned before, women are the ones who most perform the housework and caretaking, which provide us with a daily routine more connected to the neighborhood. So any transformations that happen in the neighborhood level affect our daily lives and require much more for us. So I think it is essential to make visible these difficulties of the women living in tourist and leisure-oriented places. And it seems very relevant to acquire new knowledge based on this reflection that I'm bringing today for us to talk, to understand city problems and help improve society. And it's this. Thank you for your time.